Hi guys, this is Chris for Drums Bonedo. Welcome back to a new video. Today we check out a Mapex mask Birch in a crossover configuration. That means it consists of a bass drum, a rack tom and 2 floor toms. It also includes a snare drum. Let's take a look at what it has to offer. The set is packaged in 2 boxes. So except for the bass drum, which you still need to add heads to, the drums are fully assembled. Other than a single tom holder with a ball clamp and the 6 legs for the floor toms, there's no additional hardware included. So the mask Birch is the shell only set. The shell sizes are 22 by 18 bass drum, 12 by 8 tom and 14 by 12 and 16 by 14 floor toms and a 14 by 6.5 snare. Unlike the second mask series with maple shells, which is a bit more expensive, this drum uses birch wood. The 7-ply shells are 7.2 mm thick. On the outsides they have the Mapex typical rounded sonic clear bearing edge, which provides a stronger drum head contact and also fewer overtones. The shell set currently costs 849 euros, so it can be classified in the lower mid-range. However, it is currently not offered in a package with a hardware set, so you would have to own some cymbal stands and a hi-hat machine, and of course a bass drum pedal and some cymbals too. So it seems more suitable for ambitious players and not for poor beginners. While the wooden shells make a good impression, except for a small hole in the edge of the snare drum, some details seem to be executed a bit cost-saving. For example, the diamond sparkle wrap is quite thin but neatly glued. In addition, it is noticeable that the throw-off of the snare drum is a really very simple model. Although the claws of the bass drum are made of simple sheet metal. The same applies to the fairly light 1.6 mm tension hoops of the toms and snare, which are not all perfectly round. The biggest saving factor, however, are the heads, especially on the toms. Here Remo UTs are used as better heads and the even cheaper Remo UX models as resonant heads. It does not look much better on the snare drum. The snare wires are also made accordingly simple. On the other hand, the snare beds of the snare drum make a good impression. The bass drum makes the most robust impression with the pre-damped heads in power stroke 3 manner. The resonant head is unported, so if you want to mix the drum from the inside, you will have to cut a hole in the head. In the first tuning, we listened to the set in its factory configuration, meaning with the unported resonant head on the bass drum. I just put a piece of foam between the 2 heads to make the drum sound a little drier and fatter. I also took some cotton balls, 2 pieces and 4 pieces, and placed them on the resonant heads of the 2 floor toms to adjust the sustain a bit. I found it very easy to tune the set to useful intervals. I also really like the sensitive response of the snare drum. Despite this throw-off, I didn't feel like it was holding me back. Whether I would go on stage with it, however, is another matter. The toms sound a bit thin and quite glassy with the factory heads. With some overtone damping, like the mini muffs, I find them more usable. It is noticeable that the 14-inch floor tom in particular sounds a little less present compared to the other two toms. Also, I think if the two floor toms had wider rubber feet instead of the tiny ones, they would be much fatter sounding. For the second take, I swapped the drum heads on the toms and the snare for Remo coated ambassadors. And the bass tom now has an Evans G3 head with a porthole on it as well. The drum kicks a lot more that way. Let's hear how that sounds. So here comes my conclusion. The Mapex Birch crossover kit falls a bit short of my expectations. Also because they are birch wooden shells and not the usual entry-level poplar shells. I would have hoped for a bit more dynamics and bite from the set. And as you could hear, the sound can be increased with branded heads on the toms and snare. However, not to the extent that you have the feeling that you are now suddenly sitting behind a set of the upper class. As it's the case, for example, with the Drumcraft 4 and Drumcraft 6 sets, which are not so much more expensive compared to the masked Birch. I also think that the toms and snare of the masked Birch would deliver much more dynamics and generally a more present signal with more rigid and thicker tension hoops. What I liked best was the sensitive response of the snare and the quite rich kick sound of the bass drum. All in all, the price of the set is quite high in relation to the features of the Mapex masked Birch for my feeling. In this price range there's a lot of competition going on, including partly reduced upper class shell packs or fully equipped entry-level sets which then cost around 1000 euros. For lessons in the music school or as a pure practice kit, the Mapex masked Birch would be okay. But if you want to take the next step towards high-end sound, you should rather look a little further. So that's it for today. If you liked the video, please give it a thumbs up. Also leave a comment, I would like to know what you think about the Mapex masked Birch. Then I see you next time. Bye!